You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 254 of Teach Better Talk. My name's Ray Hewart. Unfortunately, I'm also with Jeff Gargas. I am really sick of him, and I'm ready to end this episode so that I can stop talking to Jeff.
But you said fortunately.
I meant unfortunately.
You meant unfortunately. Okay,
unfortunately,
gotcha.
Jeff Gargas is here. Round of applause, everyone. Woo! Hi, Jeff Gargas. How are you?
Thanks. I hope that Chris puts in like a stadium cheers right behind that, so it sounds like a stadium is cheering for Jeff Gargas at this point.
Hold on, let's pause right here. Okay, Jeff, put it right now.
Well, no, it would have been when you were... now you ruined it. It would have been like when you said that, he just did it.
No.
It would have been really cool.
I want our podcast listeners to know it's a fake applause. No one's happy you're here.
Because otherwise they'd be like, oh, they must be in a stadium.
We could be recording with a live studio audience.
Why did Teach Better Talk decide to do a live studio audience? Actually, a stadium studio, not even a live stadium audience in the middle of a pandemic.
Hey guys,
podcast.
Hey guys, happy.
Hey, this is what we do, you know.
Happy 254th episode.
I mean, let's face it. At this point, if you were still listening to us after 254 episodes plus all the bonus episodes, I mean, maybe we should fill a stadium.
No. What if they're new listeners? Because Leah is an incredible guest that we have on here in a little bit. They might be brand new. This might be the first episode that they listen to. That's true.
So if this is your first episode, what I would recommend, just recommend it. You don't have to do this, but I would recommend, like, on your, whatever player you're listening to, there's probably like a little button that kind of looks like a circle with an arrow and like a 3-0. Like you could skip 30 seconds ahead and just get to Leah. I would suggest doing that because you're not going to get anything from Ray and I.
Leah is outstanding.
Last time we talked about ice cream or something. I don't know. Whoa. Now we're talking about stadium podcast. Things.
Why are you hating on the ice cream? That was a really inquisitive conversation. I really enjoyed that whole experience. And Leah's episode is coming up. We just have a little bit we were going to talk about first, but if you're going to hate on it, I can do this without you.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead. Actually, you can now. See, I used to be able to pull that card because I edited the podcast, but now that Chris does, I have zero. I have zero value to bring.
Well, Jeff, the idea would be... I
don't know why you don't do this without me.
The idea would
free
be...
up my Monday nights.
You would be the talent, except you're actually just like the side pony. It's fine. It's no big deal. I really do like our Monday nights together, to be honest.
I'm sure. Well, actually, you know what? I'll prove it. You booked time for us to chat after this. Okay? It's currently 8:35 p.m. my time, and we're meeting again at 9 o'clock my time to meet. Which, by the way, you put on that calendar event, short meeting to discuss blah, blah, blah. And I told my wife that, she goes, I don't think you and Ray do short. Well, I'm like, yeah, I know.
That's true, but can I also preface, you don't get to give me any grief about that because, guys, I am taking 2 weeks. If you're watching YouTube, by the way, watch this quotation. 2 weeks off of work. Quote unquote. I don't know that it's going to happen, but because of that, there's a lot to talk about, Jeff. You're not going to talk to me for 2 weeks. Are you going to be able to handle it?
Do you really think I'm not going to talk to you for 2 weeks?
Literally zero contact. I'm not even going to reply to your text messages.
I mean, you might not be working as much for 2 weeks because you're going to whatever, but like we're not going to speak for 2 weeks.
Never. No speaking.
That's not accurate.
All
I mean...
right.
If your mom's taking care of you, I'm going to talk, because I talk to your mom every day, if not every other day. Like, we just chat about life. So, like, I'm going to speak to you at least via
It's
there.
true. Do you think if I was having surgery on my vocal
Hi, Julie.
cords? Hi, Julie.
What?
Do you think if I was having surgery on my vocal cords that we would just text a lot? I don't think that would
just
stop
text a lot, yeah.
From actually
but since this time it's going to possibly affect the
arm,
yeah, we're gonna text vocally instead.
Oh, wow. Phone calls. Ancient way of communication. All right. Let's get into this. Really, Jeff, I do want to get into this episode.
Are we still recording?
Yes.
This is ridiculous.
Because Leah was so good, and I want to get into that. But I do want to mention we have something that's kind of at the tail end of this series, and I want to make sure that if people haven't tuned in, they have all the details because there's a lot there. And don't worry, because if you've missed any of this series, guys, it's going to be housed in the Academy. So you can catch everything on social media as it's going. But, you know, if you want to check there so you can get everything all together, we can do that too. So can we talk about the grid series?
Yeah, so this is the Build in a Grid series, which features Chad Ostrowski, creator of the grid method.
Yes, and not only just Chad, but then also a different educator is joining him live every single Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, and they're literally building a grid live. And I have to tell you, don't tell Chad, I've been super impressed with these. Like, there is so much value in watching this process.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I said a bunch that we've talked about this once or twice before when we've been live, and we talked about this stuff, that this is like this whole the process of the grid being built is one of my favorite things about what we do. I love actually doing that and getting in there and getting creative. But I really love, and I say both Chad and you, I really enjoy both watching either one of you work with an educator to do it, because there's these moments that happen where like you trigger this extra level of creativity in their minds, or this I haven't looked at things that way, I didn't think then, because sometimes just having someone from an outside perspective do that. And this is, I mean, Chad literally does this every day, like all day long. So it's really fun to watch him do it. And we're a few weeks in right now. We've got a few weeks left, and we've had elementary teachers, high school teachers. We've got some middle level, like intermediate or middle school level teachers. We're rounding out the series with an admin. Yeah, so from the admin perspective.
Let's talk through all those details, just in case you're tuning in now, or so you can write down the dates so you don't miss any more, and then catch the ones that you already missed in the academy. So if you have not caught it, we're doing a Build the Grid series, which for those of you who are not familiar with the grid method, it's the mastery framework that we do an enormous amount of professional development with, not only with teachers, but also with school districts kind of around the world. And so what we decided is, because so many educators have been telling us this mastery framework is helping them be so effective with students, whether it be in a remote or hybrid or in-person setting, we really wanted to make sure that everybody had as much access to support as possible. So outside of the support we do, obviously in person or in a virtual setting and in our academy, this live series was something special where we wanted you to see the beginning process of actually putting together this mastery framework, the grid method. So if you have caught these already, we've already done elementary math, secondary science, elementary reading, and secondary social studies. Still up next, we have a number of sessions left. Again, this is every single Tuesday at 8 o'clock Eastern. We have secondary writing, elementary art, secondary PE, and then like Jeff said, we're ending with a discussion around how administrators can support teachers who are teaching in this mastery mindset, where you are allowing students to take ownership over their learning and run their learning progression through the self-paced model. So I'm so excited for this. There's been so much value. And like I said, it will be saved. But if Tuesday you have some time on your hands, throw it on your calendar just in case. It streams on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. It's super easy. And you can ask questions live. So even if you're watching an elementary math grid being built, you can still ask questions if you're a high school math teacher, or if you're writing if you're watching a high school writing grid get built and you're a reading teacher, you can still ask questions live and go through that process with them. So enjoy.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I want to make sure everyone understands, is that like if the session that you tune in for is an elementary math and you're a high school history, like you should still watch that, because just watching the way they break down their content will help you think through how you can break down your content.
It's true.
So, and I was gonna actually make a note that this seems like a lot of PD, and like that it would be really expensive, and how much was it? But you already noted that it streams all over our social media 100% free.
100%.
And then it's going into the course. We're gonna house it all in the course. You can all go watch them all in one place and go back to them and stuff, and get everything that's associated with it. So, like Ray said, 8 o'clock Eastern time every Tuesday. It's going until the last one is April 13th, correct?
Let me double check.
I believe so.
Yes, it's April 13th is the last one.
And then after that date, they will all be housed in the course over at teachbetteracademy.com, so you can get that there. So awesome. I love it. All right, let's talk about this episode. You already mentioned that Leah is awesome. She did an incredible job on this episode. She is a high school English and theater teacher in New York. She was actually we didn't even touch on this, but she was the 2009 Teacher of the Year in New York City. Which I thought was really cool.
So cool.
She's got her blog over at Lovin' You Big, and she's writing a memoir related to that as well. We dive into that a little bit, which I really love her hash behind that, what she's doing with that, and the stories she's sharing. She had some great advice in this episode. Ray, anything you want particularly to call out other than her being amazing?
I just think she's outstanding, and I hope you connect with her. She has incredible value to share, and she's continuously building her network so that she can amplify the stories that she continues to share. So you'll see in this episode what she cares about, and trust me, you'll want to hop on board.
I love it. With that, let's get into episode 254 with Leah Moore. Hey, what's up, podcast? It's Jeff. Don't worry, I'm going to get you right back on the episode. But before we do, I just want to make sure that you're aware of a brand new course over at teachbetteracademy.com, and that is Strategic Student Conferencing. Join Ray and Dr. Dave Schmittou as they explore the 5 essential elements of maximizing student conferencing sessions, with the understanding that every educator in every school building, in every community, and every subject area will support students differently during student conferencing, and that's okay. It's time to be strategic with our questioning and the time we have with our students. Fill up your toolbox with strategies you need to make the most of your conferencing time as quickly as tomorrow. Get it right now over at teachbetteracademy.com. Use the code PODCASTTALK. Save 25% right now. All right, let's get back to the episode. All right, we're here. We're chatting with Leah Moore. And Leah, it is awesome to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking some time and hanging out with us. I'm really excited to learn more about you, dive into the questions, and to hear about your story. But before we get too far into that, how are you feeling right now?
Frankly, I'm a little exhausted. It's been a long Monday of teaching, but I'm really excited to be here with you guys. So I'm going to stay up past my bedtime.
Well, Leah, I totally understand that. I have also taught all day, and it is so past my bedtime. So I'm with you here. We are going to power through this. Maybe get a scoop of ice cream. I think that's going to help. That's a joke from a previous episode. So I think that's going to help. But Leah, there are
you getting
things.
A scoop or a whole, like the whole container, Ray?
I'm going to get a scoop of ice cream to help us through, and Leah needs a scoop as well. So 2 scoops.
Please.
It's going to be great. Anyway, Leah, I want to make sure that our listeners get to hear about you as we get started in these questions today. So would you mind answering that age-old question of, hey, Leah, what do you do?
I am a high school English and theater teacher in New York. And I'm also a mom and an advocate.
So let me ask you, so this year obviously been a little bit different.
Yes.
Are you, this is like multiple parts, but are you currently, what's your current status? Are you hybrid? Are you back and forth? Are you in person? Are you fully virtual? And how has that changed throughout the year?
I am in person until I'm not. So we've been shut down temporarily, but for the most part, I'm in person. And my students are a variety of different options based on their needs, based on their own health. I've learned it's octopus arms teaching. And at any moment, I'm ready for whatever happens next. But for the most part, I am face-to-face with children. And
you teach both English and theater, correct?
I do.
So
I do.
How has the potential switching back and forth, and when you're in, and I'm sorry, you said you were in person for most of the year?
Yeah, we've been in person for most of the year. So my English classes have been mostly in person, and they're a little bit easier to go into virtual land. My theater class is an adaptive theater class it's for students with significant special needs, and several are nonverbal. So they're in school every day unless the school's shut down. And then we try to do things virtually or with pre-recorded video, which is significantly harder.
So you've been, even when the school has been shut down, or when others have chosen to be virtual, you've still been working with them in person for most of the year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless I'm not allowed in the building, and then we all try to Zoom in together. Yep.
Gotcha. So yeah,
which is tricky.
That's gotta be pretty tricky. So how have you got around that? Sort of, what have you found that has been working better than other things?
So for that particular class, I try to rely on the structure that they know and they're used to. So I can't redirect them with anything other than my voice and high engagement songs, or I've sort of used the best practices that I found throughout the year. And then I purposely have been testing out different strategies when we're in person, and then pocket those for the ones that have the most smiles or the most clapping. I might put several of those back to back for a lesson. So it might lack a little continuity of the skill building, but it's engaging. And I have a child with significant special needs at home. And I know that sometimes just having your child engaged with an educator for a few minutes is what parents need. So that's really my goal. I've changed it around a little bit.
Gotcha. I love the work that you do and your focus. So let's talk about Loving You Big.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. I know you have the blog, but then also Is there a book coming? Is that
Yes,
right now?
there's a book coming.
Tell us all about that.
I would love to. So Loving You Big is my side project for when you're an overworked teacher and have 3 small children and think, what could I do to make my life just a little bit harder? So my oldest child, who's going to be 10 this week, was diagnosed with a very rare disorder called Cretisha. And I didn't know what to do with the information. And despite being an educator and despite my husband's also a teacher, I had absorbed this notion that stories about disabilities were sad, that this diagnosis was something that needed to be fixed and it was something that needed to be mourned. And it only started to make sense to me when I started writing. I actually modeled an assignment for my students, a personal narrative assignment for 9th graders. And the story about my daughter poured out of me. And then it just kept pouring. So it started as a blog. We made a documentary about her. And then it turned into a memoir, which is really helping other parents remember that joy is still possible, that you can still be the family you know to be, and that a disability diagnosis does not define a family. And so many stories about disabilities are sad. They're hard, sad stories. And I wanted a sense of humor, and I wanted to just connect to what parents, I think, needed to hear. So that memoir is coming out this August.
I love it. I love that story. I love what it's about. I'm excited for that. So that's you can check out more over at lovingyubig.com for more on that and to kind of follow that journey. So that's fantastic. Let's go to one of my favorite questions, and this is talking about failure. So can you share a story with us about a time that you've had a failure in life that you've had to overcome? Kind of take us there with you. What happened? How did you overcome that? And what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah, I loved this question because I answered in regards to my teaching career specifically, and I've been teaching for over 15 years now, and there have been so many failures. It was hard to decide which one, but the one that really stood out, probably because I'm in this frame of mind right now, was the first day I taught this adaptive theater class. And I have an educational theater degree. I have a child with special needs. I overplanned this one lesson. I think I worked on it for 3 weeks. I ran it past my husband. I had 25 activities, and within 15 minutes, the entire lesson, it was over. None of those activities worked, and I still had a half hour left of the class with literally nothing to do. And I kind of just improv'd my way through it, like pulling on those old skills from college, and the class left, and I burst into tears, which I don't think I've done since I was a first-year teacher. But just that pressure that you feel, the responsibility, I hadn't felt that way in such a long time in my practice. I feel pretty confident when I'm in the classroom, and it was truly a disaster. And it's been one of my best failures, I would say, in the past several years.
All right, so Leah, let's flip it around now. Let's talk about a successful moment you've had. This can be something big or small, but tell us what happened. Why was it a success for you? And then what did you take away from that experience?
So I teach 9th grade English, and one of the essential questions for the year is about being an upstander and understanding how your own moral growth shapes your ability to be an upstander. And I asked the students to take on this claim-based argument, but they can do it in any assessment that speaks to them. So I have students who are using art or drawing. One girl did the whole thing through gymnastics, and we find a way to make it really analytical, but also really personal. And about 2 years ago, a student who, if anyone's been in the classroom, I call them the invisible students. They do everything they can to sort of hide in the background, and they're really reticent to participate. She stood up in front of the class and sang this incredible song that she wrote about finding your voice, which was her claim for her paper and her the book she was reading, but it was also this gorgeous, metacognitive moment where she was also finding her own voice. And the class erupted in applause, and a few of them were crying. And it was one of those moments you would see on television and think that doesn't really happen in a classroom. But she was so brave and took this risk. And it was so amazing and rewarding. And when I reflected on that, I realized all that layering that had to be done to build a community and to help people take those smaller risks so that when the big risks happen, she was able to do it. And I'll never forget that moment. I was so proud of her.
Oh, I love those moments. I feel like I got chills. Like, those are the
amazing.
Best.
Yeah.
So tell me, I mean, geez, with everything that you're doing, there really is a lot, right? You just went through so many different experiences in your personal life, but also in your passion for education. What do you feel like is really fueling your fire, like keeping you excited about what's going on right now in education and all the things that you're doing?
Yeah, so it's not an easy time to be an educator, as we all know. And I am really focusing for both of my courses into two worlds. So for this adaptive theater class, I really want to promote voice and agency and choice for all students, even if they're nonverbal. So I can put cards in front of kids and let them choose the one they want, or let them choose the color without just assuming that I should be giving it to them. And these small moments to reframe those choice and voice. And I've been doing some more reading and research about the history of ableism and the legacy from the eugenics movement. And that's really empowering. And then the big piece that is fueling everything I'm doing is about disrupting the narrative. So every text that we read in the classroom, I want to point out what's problematic about it and what we can celebrate about it. I'm teaching To Kill a Mockingbird right now. It's a perfect text for that. I'm currently obsessed with Loretta Ross's article and concept of calling in. So when we're looking at fostering civil discourse, especially right now, when we're talking about race and equity in the classroom, ways that students can be invited in and called in to the conversation rather than being called out, and how we can keep that discourse going despite all the different ideas going on in the classroom. So I'm spending a lot of time in professional development and reading on my own to bring that back in, so that while the world around me is crazy and shutting down, I'm still feeling engaged.
Well, and it's so important to feel that way. So I think those are great strategies. Do you have, and this is probably the trickiest question, it's like a struggle asking, but I'm always excited. Do you have a piece of advice that you feel like every educator needs to consider right now? I mean, with the incredible circumstance that we're all dealing with, what would be one piece of advice that you really hope teachers consider?
I think that being kind to yourself and to each other as educators. And the best way I have found to do that is to celebrate and share best practices. So you're like passing someone in the hallway, or you have get another Zoom meeting. And by being really honest about what you're struggling with and what's not working, and hearing someone else say, I just tried this and it actually worked for me, or someone just told me to start with a blob tree recently, and it's this really great resource. Everyone can Google it, and students can just kind of identify where they are on this blob tree. And I used it and it worked, and it was a simple practice and it was great. And I feel like the more we can celebrate and support each other with those best practices, we can keep lifting each other up, because it is so hard right now to get through these days. That would be my advice.
I love that advice. Celebrate and to share. I mean, it's so important to celebrate ourselves and our colleagues and everything that's going on, especially in times like this. And when we talk about the sharing and just sharing those best practices and sharing what's working for you. You know, Chad Ostrowski with the team always says that for every issue there is in the classroom anywhere, there's a solution somewhere else in another classroom. So it's that sharing and just celebrating things that are working for you and not being afraid to put it out there because it might help someone else. I love that.
Yeah.
So spot on. So, all right, let's have some fun with the next 6. We're going to do the next 6 questions. I'm going to throw them at you. Your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is one EdTech tool you cannot live without?
Flipgrid and Jamboard.
Technically, that's 2.
Oh, okay. I can go back.
It's all right. That's just you going above and beyond.
It was still within the time allotted, though.
That's true. So. I just ruined it for you. So you win, I lose. Give us a book you're reading right now.
I'm on page 1 of a children's Bible by Lydia Millet.
Well, I like it. I know you had a couple of them. You can give us up to 3 if you'd like.
Oh, okay, great. I'm also reading Courageous Conversations About Race by Glenn Singleton and Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert for my own writing.
Who do we need to follow on Twitter or Instagram today? You can give us up to 3 here as well.
You need to be following Facing History, We Need Diverse Books, and NCTE.
What's a good YouTube channel, website, or podcast educators should check out?
I need to say more about Facing History. Facing History.
Give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine every teacher should get into.
You have to walk away from your classroom or your Zoom computer and take a walk for 5 minutes, as much as possible.
Like that. And lastly, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
It's a strategy. It's called Line of Familiarity, and it goes from the most personal to the furthest away response you can have, and it works for everything.
Okay, can you dive into that a little bit more?
I can.
Yes, please.
Beyond the 15
that really
seconds.
grabbed me.
Okay. So it's called the Line of Familiarity, and it goes from left to right on a continuum. You talk personal, someone you love, someone you know, someone you've heard of, nonfiction, and fiction. And anytime you ask a student to respond about anything, they can access any of those points on the Line of Familiarity, and teachers can model different ones. And in doing so, it helps them practice all these different points of empathy and points of access. And that's the way to build community, because they're practicing across the continuum.
I love that.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the best. It's just a graphic you can put up on the wall, and then you can always refer to it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So neat. I got to look more into that for sure. Wow. Leah, I want to make sure that everybody can stay connected with you because, our listeners, obviously, we love putting out these episodes, but we also love when these, episodes turn into connections. We say once you're on the podcast, you're family. So would you mind sharing how people can stay connected to you after this episode?
Sure. So Loving You Big is the answer to everything. So my website is lovingyouBig.com, and my Twitter and my Facebook and my Instagram are all Loving You Big. And that's the best way to find me. I'm in all those spaces.
I made that pretty easy for us there.
Yes.
So, you can find all the links and all the resources, everything we mentioned in this episode over at teachbetter.com, as well as the really important links for connecting with Leah, or you can just find everything at Loving You Big. But that way you can connect with Leah and keep the conversation going with her. So head over to teachbetter.com for everything like that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And if you give us a rating and review, we'd really appreciate that as well. Let's keep taking this one step further. Think of just 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and connect with these amazing educators, and just share this podcast with them. Leah, this was awesome. I love your outlook on stuff. I love what you're writing, and I'm really excited about Loving You Big and everything you're doing there. Just really appreciate you coming on. So much value in this episode. So just thanks for taking some time and hanging out with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time, let's get out there and let's teach better.